The opinions expressed on the radio program by the hosts, co hosts, guests, and call in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Genesis Radio, www.genesisradio.com, Genesis Radio's owners, management, or affiliates.
All right. Good evening. It is 6 o'clock on the dot. Thank you guys very much for tuning in to GenesisRadio.com. My name is Kendall Stevenson. I am the host of The Empowerment Show. The Empowerment Show is spawned from unity in the community. If you guys like to give us a call at 888-304-4401. As always, we like to start off our segment, and this segment will be like no other. Our segment is I like to always give some sort of gratitude, things that I'm grateful for. Now, I got a 0.0008 on my PSA, so I'm feeling pretty good. We're on that ride to recovery. That's a good thing. That's a good blessing for me. I also like to give condolences out to a family. There's a young man named Tim. I'm not going to give his last name, but recently he lost his grand, and the grand was 3 months old. So I just like to pay homage and give a moment of silence and say thank you very much. I like to also let you people know if you have a family, you have loved ones around you, please hold on tight because they're not going to be here forever. And one day you'll wake up and say, I can't call them because they're not going to be able to call them. So this evening is going to be a good evening. I always have a young lady. She is a friend of the show. And we're always happy to have her on. Her name is Tara Probst. Yay.
Hello. Thanks for having me again. And number one, I like your hat. Congratulations to the
Go
Philadelphia
Eagles.
And number two, I'm glad you're doing good. That's
Thank
awesome. And good, better health. That's great.
Outstanding. So tell me, what's new in the world of politics?
Oh man, where do we start?
Oh
right?
man, how about we start with? There's been a couple of decisions that have gone down. Like they call it U.S. aid, and Elon Musk, the new president, Elon Muskrat, he wants to close it, close the funding, take it away. Why does he want to do that?
So here's the thing. I am a state representative. I am for Pennsylvania. These are our federal representatives, and what happens on the federal level trickles down to the states. And the day that they shut the government funding down, my office was flooded with calls because I understand bureaucracy. I understand trying to make sure that government works more efficiently. But to do that, you must do it in a way that is not going to cause people panic and alarm. For example, when they shut the government down, it shut off veterans benefits, it shut off Social Security, it shut off Medicare, Medicaid, Head Start for our preschoolers, and we had absolute chaos in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And to have the amount of people that are going to lose their job or said that don't come back when they do so much work for either other nations like the USAID, empower women in other countries, feed sick children in other countries.
One of them, right?
Exactly. And these are very, very important pieces of the U.S. government, realizing that there can be some waste, there can be some abuse, but you don't go in and just this isn't a TV show, you're fired. You know what I mean? There needs to be a methodical way to make sure you do things because you affect 60,000 government workers, their lives, their homes, their families, their children. And then to get the calls from the veterans that couldn't get help that day, from the Head Start. I mean, it was absolute chaos. And chaos is never good, ever.
Good, never. But I would tell you it's a good thing we do have some checks and balances. Like the courts came in
Mhm.
and they were able to do what they need to do as far as keep us in checks and balances.
Well, that's why Janet should be answering this next
is why I'm
question.
asking Janet. So I understand. Let's introduce her properly. You are
Janet Jackson.
Janet Jackson, and you are.
I'm a candidate for judge of the Court of Common Pleas of Monroe County. I'm a lawyer in Stroudsburg. I have been for more than 35 years, and I'm running for the first time. I've never run for a political office before. And I do think that the role of the courts right now at this particular point in time is critical. If the courts don't maintain the balance of power and stop the executive branch from doing the kind of random things that were just described, that and the impact that they had on Pennsylvanians, we will have chaos, and chaos is certainly not what anybody wants. And when I made my decision to run, it was more based on my own life experience and where I am as a lawyer. But the things that have been happening in the last few years that call into question the role of the courts are things that I'm concerned about, as I think all Americans are.
Well, I think, Janet, that one of the things that you talked about, which I think is, really critical, is that there's checks and balances in government. And that's what keeps us a democracy versus being a ruler, a dictator, a fascist. When you have checks and balances, no branch of government is more powerful than another one. And that's what kept the United States for as long as we've been. And, my question to you, while Kendall had to step out for a second, is being a lawyer for 35 years, you have done criminal, you have done civil. If I'm not mistaken, you've been to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
I have not been to the Supreme Court, but I've been to the both the Commonwealth Court and the Pennsylvania Superior Court multiple times.
Right, and that is really, really important because every single level of adjudication and where it goes and how it should go. And right now, when you hear complaints of people saying the court shouldn't be able to tell us what to do, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know mine.
Well, the role of the
Thank
courts is to interpret the laws that you and your colleagues write and pass, and to make those laws effective. But I think of the courts as the last line of defense in the attack on democracy, because the executive branch can do anything if no one forces the power to be balanced. And it takes a lot longer for the legislature to react to things and to, as multiple houses of the legislature have to agree on things before we can make new laws. We can interpret laws as judges very quickly. We can temporary restraining orders. These are the kind of things that people are seeking when the executive branch makes a rash decision, like we're going to just eliminate an entire organization within the government, like the USAID.
Yeah, and I
Has
think
it always been your passion to want to be a judge? What made you decide to become a judge?
No, it has not always been my passion to want to be a judge. It was always my passion to be a lawyer. And I have been a passionate advocate for my clients for all these years. I really have twice as much legal experience as anybody else who's running. And I have more trial experience. I've been in a courtroom in front of a Court of Common Pleas judge over and over and over again for the past more than 35 years. I started off as the first full-time public defender in Monroe County, and I tried every kind of criminal case, misdemeanors, felonies, eventually homicide cases. I've had multiple homicide cases, 2 trials, not just cases where my client pled guilty, but where the case actually went to trial. I've also most recently been appointed by former President Judge Margarita Patty Worthington to handle the defense of a death penalty case. And the defense of death penalty cases is very specific. I was actually surprised when I started to handle my first one at how much more I still needed to learn in order to do that type of a case. But I'm the only judicial candidate currently.
Please
Who-
excuse me again. I gotta take this sweater off. I'm burning
Don't
up.
worry, I have lots of questions for
Well,
you.
there's a question that I wanted to ask you. So
Sure.
you mentioned that you were running against two other people. Who are those two other people?
Patrick Best, who's a lawyer in Stroudsburg,
Correct.
and Jamie Levy, who's currently a magisterial district judge in Smithfield Township. The thing that a lot of people don't understand is that magisterial district judges don't have to be lawyers in order to be elected. It's considered actually, I think it's something of a benefit to the system when it is a person who's a non-lawyer, because the magisterial district court is where things sometimes can get resolved without involving so many lawyers, so many courts, so much decision making by lawyers. But you have to be a lawyer to run for judge of the Court of Common Pleas, and both Patrick Best and Jamie Levy have that qualification. There's also a Republican candidate, Kelly Lombardo, who's primarily an estate lawyer working for a firm that only does estate work, but she does have trial experience, having served for a brief period of time in the District Attorney's Office of Monroe County prosecuting cases. But when I was talking about death penalty qualifications, you have to have a certain number of felony trials tried to a jury before you can even be considered to be qualified to handle a capital punishment case. And you have to take additional training, hours of training every year in order to be qualified to handle a capital case. So I've only had one, but I'm the only person who could even, of the candidates, I'm the only person who could even be qualified to handle that. And the thing that I think that's important, that maybe not everybody who's never been in a courtroom or only been in a courtroom once or twice for something relatively small would know, is that lawyers who try cases know more about being a judge than lawyers who write wills or who make decisions in traffic cases, for example. Because you have to try cases before a jury. First of all, you have to know how to select a jury. You have to know how to ask those questions and make objections when you see that perhaps the prosecutor is removing all the people of color from the jury panel. And you have to be prepared to argue the cases that have been decided not just by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, but by the United States Supreme Court, in order to make sure that your client gets a fair jury and a fair trial. And I think the fact that I've had as many trials as I have makes me ready to jump right in and start serving the court. At least half of our cases are criminal cases. And I'm the only person with this type of experience, but my experience is varied, as Tara was nice enough to point out. I've also tried a lot of workers' compensation cases, injury cases, estate challenges to wills, and even represented Tara briefly when she was trying to keep the Ramsey School open many years ago. I basically like a good fight. And if I see a cause that I feel passionately about, I try to get involved in it if I can.
Okay, so here's the big question. Why should someone vote for you instead of Patrick Best or Judge Levy or the Republicans that's running? Please let them know.
Well,
Let them know.
the reason I believe that you should vote for me is that I've had the experience that I just described, but also I think I have the demeanor. I think I have the patience. I pledge that I will listen and listen long and listen hard and not make a decision about your case before I understand it, before I have heard everyone's position. And I've been doing this in my practice for a long time. I meet with people, I talk to them, I hear what's happening, and I understand it because I've not only had legal experience, I've had a lot of life experience. I've been through my own divorce. I've had my own custody trial. I know what it's like to be in the position of needing to let someone else make a decision about something so important in my life. And I will do everything I can to make the right decision every single time. I will be prepared, but I won't try to be the advocate from the bench. I will let the lawyers do their jobs. I will let you tell me about your case, and then I will make the right decision. And I pledge that, and I really believe that I can do it. And I think that I can do it. It's not a matter of comparing myself so much to the other candidates as it is, if you get a chance to talk to me and look me in the eye, you're going to know that I really care about what I do, and I will care about your case, and I won't be rushing out off the bench to go golfing or to do something else that's more interesting to me. I will appreciate the importance of the matter I have in front of me, and I'll give it the time that it needs.
That's outstanding.
And there's 2 candidates that you can choose.
Right. But
Yes,
also, you
there's
know,
2
she's-
positions open, so you can vote for more than one person, and you
Yeah.
should.
That's absolutely true. We need more judges like this when it comes down to the federal courts. We need to have more of these buffers, these checks and balances, like against this guy like Elon Musk, right? And his cronies and the things that they want to do. You know, I was looking at the people. That woman she's in now. She's going to be in charge of
Pam Bondi?
not him, the blonde bombshell. What did he call it? Yeah, her. Is
Yeah.
that her? Yeah. So she's in now.
In the United States Attorney General.
Attorney
Yeah,
General.
Attorney General. Right. That's the one with the Russian woman. She's involved with Russia. Grin.
That's Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard. Okay. She was put in. Sorry, you guys. You know I got to get it together too. But she was put in, and she's got ties. Or something. She's an ally with Russia or something like that. Or,
She's a Putin sympathizer, yeah.
yeah. What is that about? And
Well-
she's gonna help us out how in this country.
Well, here's the thing. Let's call it for what it is. 30 million people didn't vote. And when you don't vote, the winner's the winner.
Consequences. Election comes with consequences.
You know, Donald Trump is the president, and he won fair and square, just like Joe Biden won fair and square 4 years ago. I think that we're having a really interesting topic, especially with, you know, Janet running for judge, me being in the, you know, legislative position that I'm in, because one of the most important things that people, you know, maybe missed in school or, you know, didn't take the time to learn, and it's never too late, is basic civics, what the roles are.
They took that out of school.
What the roles are. The legislative branch, judicial branch, and the executive branch. We have that in Pennsylvania. We have it on the United States.
Mhm.
So you have the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, which is the law of the land. You have the legislative branch, which is our House and Senate in Pennsylvania. When you go, you know, up to Congress, it's obviously the House of Representatives and the Senate in the United States.
Mhm.
And then you have a governor like Josh Shapiro, and then you have like President Donald Trump. And there's a reason that there's 3 branches of government, and it's to keep everyone in a check and balance. But what seems to be happening is there's false information out there that the president has more power than what he has. But the scary part is that the courts are going against the laws of the land, giving certain things like nobody's above the law of the land.
Mhm.
But yet the United States Supreme Court, which we're all, you know, a majority now with Donald Trump's picks, said that the president has presidential immunity, which basically makes him untouchable, that he can break any law he wants with no consequences. And I think that that is where things become dangerous. It's not because he's the president. He has the right to pick his cabinet, whether we like it or not. He has the right to do a lot.
Sexoffender.com. That's
no,
where he need to get his
A
job.
lot of things. He has a right to do a lot of things. But what I'm afraid of is that the people are like, yeah, get him, do this, do that. They don't understand how the Constitution, and they call themselves constitutionalists.
Mhm.
They obviously don't know how the Constitution was written or formed and why it was written that way, to make sure that, you know, in the late 1700s, we fought the British to be a democracy, to fight tyranny. And it's coming back to us. I mean, even just making a statement
Well,
that
since you just say Crispus Attucks, I don't know if you guys who know who that is, but he's the first person to die for that revolution, and he was an African American.
okay,
His name was Crispus Attucks.
I did not know that. That's interesting. Well, here's another example, and I really would like Janet to weigh in on this because I think it's important. Today they made the announcement that they were, cutting the Department of Education in Washington. Let me tell you, you think your property taxes are high now? When we don't get federal dollars, it's going to crush every single person in this Commonwealth if those schools don't get funded.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the way that they want to teach. So when I was growing up, I learned about Rosa Parks. I learned about what Rosa Parks stood for, why she stayed on that bus, right? Well, now, and I don't care if you're Christian or Muslim or Jewish, I don't care. That's the beauty of the United States of America. But there is now a Christian right-wing movement for schools where now in Alabama and Florida, you know why Rosa Parks was kicked off the bus when little kids are learning? Because she didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to change history. They're trying to give alternate stories and alternate facts.
What do you mean she didn't listen?
And
she said she didn't want to ride on the. She didn't want a D in the back of the
listen,
bus.
we all know what happened.
Right.
I'm trying to show the point
Right.
that by cutting the Department of Education means cutting history, real history,
Right.
slavery, Nazi Germany, things that we must never forget, out of textbooks, out of, kids learning the history of our country and why we tried to grow and do things differently and change. So that really, truly scares me. And the courts, hopefully, Janet, jump in, I don't know, can they stop and say you're not cutting the Department of Education?
Well, it's more likely again to be a federal court decision than a state court decision, but certainly the state courts often are going to be involved in the same kind of issues that you're talking about, where there's efforts to either exclude certain books from a school library or efforts to change a curriculum to remove an entire history of a people.
Mm.
And of course, we're old enough to remember when they weren't teaching any African American history at all anyhow.
Mm.
But now the efforts are to turn back any progress that's been made, and to keep people from knowing what the use of the term alternative facts. I know where that comes from, but it's certainly alarming. There are facts and there are facts. There are no alternative facts.
Right.
There's no such thing as alternative facts. It's either a fact or it's not. And people need to understand. And I believe that the efforts to take away our free press are one of those first steps to making sure that people don't understand that there are no alternative facts. You either have a fact or you have an opinion, but if it's a fact, it's a fact. And if we do away with science, or we do away with philosophy or thought, then we will have children who don't know the difference.
We will be North Korea.
Listen,
And-
the reason
and
why
can I-
they want to do all that is because they want to do it with a critical thinker. They don't want you to be a critical thinker. The powers that be. See, if you're not a critical thinker, you're not going to do something like, I don't know, research. You're not going to take the time to sit down and actually research and a situation or a subject to say what's going on with it. So the more education, back in slavery, if you want to talk about that far back, so they would have a Bible, they would read the Bible to you, but they would not allow you to read it for
to
yourself.
learn how.
You see? So this is kind of what you got going on now. When they're taking the books out, they want to tell you what the history is. They don't want you to be able to read it for yourself.
So Kendall, I got to say something because I think this is a really important topic for this show. When, you hear like little buzzwords like, oh, DEI stands for, blah, 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 like they hate it. What communities don't understand is DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, is not just for the LGBT community. It is so that kids learn about Black Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Kids learn about, how many, great inventions that Black and brown people made in our history of the United States that we never even learned about, right? DEI is so much more. It is about helping a child with dyslexia learn how to read. It is about helping child with intellectual disability learn how to come into school and at least be part of something. It's to help, people with disabilities, physical disabilities, be able to come to school. The buses that help them get on the bus so that we can get them into the school. That is all DEI. And it's this narrative that is really, really, truly upsetting because it's more important and it's more expansive than what Elon Musk is sending out in tweets. He's limiting it. And it's just a very scary time we're in right now. And, in 1939, with Hitler and Germany rising, Janet and I learned about that because I'm in my 50s, right? Janet's in her 50s, whatever, or however old we are. You learned about it. But kids today, I know you're a little older, but kids,
was that a punchline?
but listen, I mean this. I mean
What was
this.
that?
This is really important. Kids today are so far removed from World War II, like we are so far removed from the Civil War. They don't realize what we fought for, why we fought for it, and how patriotism, following the Constitution and fighting for your freedoms really meant. And instead, they go by a Joe Rogan podcast or they go by some a weird thing that is being spewed out by the White House that just simply isn't true. And if we don't have critical thinkers to say, let me just research that. But now I'm afraid because all the billionaire techs are in this White House administration. So when they go to research it, it doesn't matter where you go. It's going to be like whatever propaganda they want to put out. It happened in Germany. They burned books. They did all this. They killed 6,000 Jews. And it's happened. It's a very scary time. And the courts are going to be the most important part of our world. And we need our judges on state, federal, the U.S. Supreme Court. We need them to be impartial. We need them to follow the Constitution. And the Brown versus the Board of Education, that those courts said, separate schools doesn't mean equality. And we need courts to really follow the law, not follow a king.
And
I just
the
wanna
law
say
for
something.
judges is also the rules of ethics. That's the other thing that's important to remember is that judges have to follow the rules of ethics. And if they don't, then the courts are failing. They're part of the balance of power.
I just wanted to say, so DEI, first of all, most people don't even know what it means when you talk to the average Joe Blow walking down the street. So what powers it be been able to do is first they politicize it. Same thing they did with CRT. Same thing they did with the affirmative action.
Right.
So first they criminalized it. They made it political. Then now they criminalize it. So people are afraid of it, like they were with the CRT, which most people don't understand. It was just a college subject. It was just a subject that was taught in college. It's just theory. All right. Secondly, we've been through this before, and prior to even when you talk about what took place in Germany, I can go back to the 1800s in 1880 when we talk about Reconstruction as to what happened then. Because right after slavery, Black people like myself, we had the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
We even had people in office, but because of the Southern strategy, that was all taken away. So we've been down this road again, and we had to fight for it again back in the 60s again, and then even in the early 2000s, we had to fight again. Like now with the affirmative action, that was taken away, and that was become more like a domino effect.
Yep.
So this is all something that it is a conspiracy, and conspiracies are things that are thought out years ahead, generations ahead, and one generation follows what the generation before did.
Yeah.
Just that they come back stronger. Like this is the new Jim Crow. It's Jim Crow Senior, Jim Crow Esquire.
Well, these are the things that scare me. We can get through 4 years of different policies in 4 years. It's not. Let me just say this. The way that it's going right now, you have people in office that are so afraid to lose their job if they don't say yes, that they would rather keep their job and their pay and forget about the American people, because if they say, no, I don't agree with you, they're out. And I think that's spineless. And I hope karma comes back, because I would rather lay down and die than squabble or, want the praise of a dictator. Kill me first.
Good evening. How are you? And welcome to the Empowerment Show. How can I help you? Have a question for the young ladies?
Yes, I do. Good evening. I just want to piggyback off of what Tara was speaking about the DEI and how it's affecting all Americans. It's affecting the disabled. It's affecting the mentally challenged people, the autistic children, being able to get the funding that they need,
Yep.
property taxes going up. I mean, I just feel at this point that we are in really for a rough 4 years. And hopefully we can have the judges and the Senate and everyone try to fight for the rights of people. But I just really want to piggyback and say thank you, Tara, for speaking about all the things that it is affecting.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks for listening and calling. And that's why, like, even having Janet here in the Court of Common Pleas, don't think that these cases and these sort of cases won't be coming in front of the judges in Monroe County in some way, shape, or form in a smaller, in a small, maybe a school district issue. So these are really important things, right? And we got to make sure that Monroe County and Pennsylvania stays intact.
And stay strong.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for calling in, and you have a pleasant evening. Thank you again for calling in. And anyone else would like to give us a call, the telephone number is 888-304-4401. We always appreciate your call and become a friend of the show. If you like to watch the show, you can watch us live. We're on Facebook. Matter of fact, we're on all social media platforms. So if you like to tune in live, please do so. Now, Tara has a very important engagement this evening, so she's going to have to do and be on her way out. She's got to be out by 6:45, and it's 6:32. So we're gonna cut her loose. She can say what she's gonna say. I just wanted to ask her, are you running again?
I won in November of 2024, so
Okay.
I'll be running again in 2 years.
I mean senator.
Oh no, I'm in the House of Representatives.
No, I mean senator. She didn't hear what I said. Let me try it again. You running? You gonna be running again for what? Senator?
No, I'm very happy we have a one-person majority, and we've got a lot. I flipped a seat, and what we've gotten done with just one-person majority, I'm moving forward for Pennsylvania. I'm not thinking of any other thing except for the job I'm doing now, but that's sweet of you to say.
Got a big question. School taxes, property taxes.
Mhm.
I've been listening for 20 plus years about how we're going to do something about school tax as far as that. Now, I'm a brother.
This is my favorite topic.
Citizen. I'm a senior citizen. So what are you going to do? I mean, everybody else getting a tax break. Billionaires, millionaires, people who don't need it. Elon Musk has got a big contract, $38 million, like he really needs it, right? I need my little couple of coins. The property tax, school taxes, they're going up. I'm a senior. I don't work anymore.
So you're right. For the last 20 years, they were so bad that Monroe County was dead last out of all 67 counties in Pennsylvania for school funding. And I'm sorry, I call it like it is. When you have Mario Scavello and Rosemary Brown and, the Republicans basically running the House and the Senate, this stuff never came up. They didn't fund our schools. Their goal was to defund our schools and say, we're going to increase sales tax. That's going to do it. It's against the Constitution. That was all propaganda from the Republican Party, just so you know. And you cannot fund your schools based on the economy and ebbs and flows of Stroudsburg and Monroe County, or Gettysburg for that matter, right?
Or with a regressive tax.
Exactly.
Like a sales tax.
Exactly. So when I got in office, our first thing was not only did we put $1 billion into our schools, the 4 Monroe County schools got the most,
right,
because we have been bleeding taxes. 67% of our schools were paid on the backs of taxpayers. So this past year, not one of our school districts had a tax increase, and we gave them equity money. So it's a 7-year plan. So next year, some of the schools even got a rebate back, and I know they did. And next year it's going to be more, and the following year it's going to be more. So
They
you're,
get a rebate
so-
when they give me my money back.
hold on, they will. I don't know if you have a mortgage or how you pay it.
No, I don't
I'm
have a
not sure.
mortgage.
Okay. So however you pay your taxes,
Right.
your school taxes will be
Right.
less. The county upped the taxes, and some local municipalities upped their taxes, but the school districts did not. And in fact, a lot of them gave, it's not life-changing money, but it's start. It's the first time in 20 years, and the trajectory of it is going down and down and down every year. So just know that we are in there, we are funding our Monroe County schools, and we are helping. Also, if you own a home, please, 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 if you didn't do it already, file for the homestead, farmstead. You could do it at the tax assessment office. There is no, it doesn't matter what your income is. I know the East Stroudsburg School District, it's $900, $904 off. Stroudsburg is $703 off your school taxes. Go to your tax assessment office in Monroe County or Pike County, wherever you are, and file for the homestead, farmstead so you get a break with that.
You know I'm gonna have to say that one more again.
Homestead, farmstead. If you own a home, you get money off your school taxes. You must apply at the Monroe County Tax Assessment Office. Just go in, tell them you want to apply for it, call them up first. And there's no income limit. So you could be a millionaire or you could be, just getting by. But if you own your own home, you can get a break on
So
your
the only
taxes.
stipulation is that you own your own home.
That's it. You get your primary residence to be able to get this tax incentive. And finally, cyber charter thievery. We could do a whole show on that. Listen, cyber schools are killing districts throughout the Commonwealth, killing them. The law hasn't been changed since 1997. They are getting 5 times as much per student as our kids in our brick and mortar. East Stroudsburg pays out $15 million a year. Stroudsburg pays out $9 million a year for a couple hundred kids. It is unfair. It is unjust. House Bill 1422 makes, if you want to be a public school, you got to follow the same rules. So please call my office, ask me about House Bill 1422. We'll send you what the cyber charter schools have been bleeding us taxpayers dry. $2 billion in Pennsylvania to outside cyber charter schools. The results average 58% graduation rate. And when they come back to our brick and mortars, they're 2 years behind. They don't even have to show their face. They just have to hit present.
We're gonna have this on another show.
We'll have that on
You-
another
you're
show.
not gonna keep me going. But here it is. If somebody did want to call your office, what would the number be?
570-420-2850. 570-420-2850. You can also find me online. Just Google State Representative Tara Probst. It'll take you to my rep page. It'll tell you about cyber charter schools. It'll tell you about all of these things. And again, like it's been the best kept secret because the House and Senate were Republican for nearly 2 decades.
Mm.
You got the House Democrats in there now, and everybody knows about cyber charter schools. Those bills that we put forth never saw the light of day for 2 decades.
Mm.
Because why? We're Democrats. Our bills never got looked at.
Okay. All right, Tara. Not gonna keep you.
All right, Janet, have a
Great.
great interview with this guy. Kendall, thank you. Thank you, dear.
6:40,
Thanks for
6:40.
having me tonight. Bye, everybody.
Anytime,
Good to see you,
anytime.
Tara.
Thank you. You too.
All right, young lady. Again, we're back to you. We're back to judge, and here comes the judge. Yeah, we really hope that you do pretty well in the campaign.
Pretty well?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Really
pretty-
well.
As well as you can do, as best as you can be. I've met quite a few politicians. I've seen them come and I've seen them go. I've seen some get the opportunity to stay and some not. I actually find that people that are community activators, activists, I really think that they do a little bit more for the community than what the politician can do.
Right.
But from your point of view and your position, there's a lot that you can do because you are DEI, as they would say, and hopefully the court system allows you to do that because you still have to play by certain rules and regulations. No,
Very specific rules, yes. And I have to enforce the law and I have to interpret certain parts of the law. And the law keeps changing all the time. Every decision from the appellate courts changes the law just a little bit. And I've been helping to change the law in certain areas as a lawyer, but now I've been doing this for a long enough time that I think that there might be more I can do from the bench than I can just representing individual clients. If I get the job, that's what I'll do. If I don't, I'll continue to represent people and go into the same courts. The Court of Common Pleas is where I go a couple times a week, at least.
So you worked as a criminal lawyer?
I started as a public defender full-time when I came to Monroe County, and there was no other full-time public defenders at that time. Now most of the office is full-time, but you get a lot of trial experience very quickly.
So why don't you tell me one of your best case scenarios? In other words, someone came in, they were in deep, deep doo-doo, as they would say, hot water, and you were able to get them out.
Well, that's a little bit difficult. Some of the things that I would talk about are cases that I was successful representing someone
There you
and
go.
their record has been expunged though. And
Okay.
so I wouldn't talk about a case that has now been removed from the record books because my client was found not guilty and then the record was expunged, and it's just not really appropriate for me to talk about those cases once that's
Well,
happened.
here's the
So
question. Did you think you were going to win?
I'm always more optimistic than most people think I should be. Let me put it that way. I have won cases that people were very, very surprised to see me win, but that's partially because the narrative that might get reported in the newspaper or online is not necessarily what's actually happening in the courtroom. People who've served on juries probably sometimes wonder when they get home and see a newspaper that they haven't been looking at for a week because of the rules of the court, that this doesn't even sound like the same trial that I was at. And I've thought that myself when I'm reading about a trial that I'm involved in. But my goal as a lawyer is always to know the case inside out, to know more than anybody else in the room about the facts of the case, and to help the jury to see why the facts as I interpret them and as I'm presenting them for my client are the real facts. And this is what's really happened in this case. And so, every once in a while you have a person who's maybe been charged by someone who they were in a relationship with, who didn't like where the relationship was going and chose to make an allegation that turned out not to be true. And only by revealing maybe certain messages or photographs or things that the person making the allegations didn't think would come to light, when I'm able to reveal those, then the jury can collectively see that things are not as they were alleged to be by the police or by the prosecutor.
I would assume that you have your own investigation team.
It's harder and harder to have an investigation team in the Poconos these days. There's not really very many licensed private investigators anymore. Many people who were doing it for a long time have aged out or have just stopped doing it because they prefer to be retired and doing something in a warmer climate. But I certainly have investigators. Most of them are former police officers or former state troopers who do some limited amount of investigative work in their retirement. Again, those people eventually stop doing it too. And I think we have a shortage right now of good criminal investigators.
So you have to do your own investigations?
Yes, but you much of your investigation is going through the file of the police and finding what might be missing from a medical report if it's an injury case or a death. When I talked before about capital punishment litigation, the United States Supreme Court and our Pennsylvania Supreme Court require that you go back multiple generations to determine whether there's been trauma that has impacted the person who's now charged with really the most heinous kind of offenses are the ones that you would end up in.
So you go back to the person's childhood. If a kid, let's say if a person was abused as a child, that may say why he's doing what he's doing today, or have some relativity to the crime that's being committed.
Right. You may have to go back 50 years into, records that were before we even had any kind of computerized records to find records of what was going on in a child's life when they were 5 years old. For example, whether their parent abused them physically, or whether their mother had to run out in the middle of the night with them because of abuse situations. Those
Group
are the
homes, foster homes, yeah, juvenile detention, that type of thing.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
And school records. There's all sorts of records that, and sometimes medical records. And the world has changed in terms of what we recognize the impact is of autism, for example, or various forms of autism, and how they may have impacted a person 50 years ago is harder to document, because we weren't as good at documenting them.
So,
that long
in let's say you happen to get into a case where the police officer is being charged. How do you deal with a case like that?
Well, I haven't personally represented a police officer who was charged. I've certainly followed some of the cases that other people have faced in the or have seen in the news or on television. It's, I've had cases where a police officer was a victim in a case, and excuse me.
Sorry, it's
Sorry.
no longer here. I know.
Yeah. But I've had courtrooms full of police officers while I was handling a criminal case as well, because the case involved someone, something that caused all of the state police to be impacted.
They don't look at you as the enemy because you've been on the other side, if you want to say.
Well, in my experience, if you handle the case correctly, whatever your role is in the case, you're respected by the people who are in the courtroom. And I believe that most police who've faced me in a courtroom would have good things to say about me. I think that most prosecutors who've faced me in a courtroom would have good things to say about me. I think that the judges that I've gone before would have good things to say about me. I do the job very professionally, and my belief is that if I do my job right and everyone else in the system does their job right, justice is what will be the outcome. And it's when one or more of the people don't do their role properly that we might end up with someone in prison for something that they didn't do. We certainly have seen a lot of cases over the years where
Well, within my community, that's a usual thing.
right. It's the Innocence Project and many of the DNA studies would show that we don't do it all right every time. We get it wrong sometimes, and juries get it wrong
Thank
sometimes.
God for DNA.
Right. And perhaps for cameras that show
cameras.
things that weren't being shown before.
And it gives you more ammunition when you have to be a judge.
Right.
Make a
Well,
judgment.
as a judge, ammunition's not really my thing. My thing is
But I'm talking
independence
from a
and
lawyer's point
vision.
of view. That's
Right.
the lawyer's point of view.
Well, from a lawyer's point of view, it's different, and that's why I did want to emphasize before that I think that sometimes when a person becomes a judge before they have very much trial experience, they tend to want to be the lawyer in the courtroom. And when you watch those programs on TV with the judges who are very entertaining to watch and who have a lot of things to say and jump in and maybe raise their voices at the person whose case they're deciding, that's entertainment. That's not really what should happen in a courtroom. What should happen in a courtroom is that a judge maintains the order of the court by making sure that people do what they're supposed to do in a courtroom, but also listens. It's the listening and the being patient, and I have a lot of common sense, most of it born out of life experiences and just going through all the things you go through, whether it's in a courtroom or whether it's at your kitchen table. And I'm not I was less patient when I was younger, to be honest.
Right.
I was more likely to have a fast, immediate response. Now I'm more willing to take a breath.
Well, now you realize there's no simple answer to complicated questions.
Exactly.
But I'm going to tell you, just so that people know, so you have someone that's that's very intelligent. You have someone that understands the law. You have someone that's willing to be involved in the DEI. You have someone that wants to be a judge, that has a passion to be a judge, and works both sides of the fence. So this is the type of person that you can get an opportunity to vote for. So how and when is the voting going to come around?
So next week is an important point in the whole process of the election, in that we start to collect signatures from registered Democrats and registered Republicans. We cannot, unfortunately, receive signatures from independents, but both Republicans and Democrats can sign petitions for judicial candidates, and we have to have a certain number in order to be able to be placed on the ballot, and that's what we'll be doing for a 3-week period, which is a very intense period of time to get a lot of signatures from a lot of voters. And then the actual election of whichever candidates get onto the ballot will be on May 20th. That'll be the primary. And again, people are voting for 2 judicial candidates if they choose to. But I think that people should realize that these are some of the most important positions that will be on the ballot this year, in that if you have, the Court of Common Pleas is called the Court of Common Pleas because of some, something that happened in England, many, many years ago, and they were distinguishing the Court of Common Pleas from the Royal Court. So the Court of Common Pleas was for the regular person's regular problems, the kind of problems anybody can have: a custody matter, a car accident, a criminal case where they're a victim or where they are the person charged, a person or a family who doesn't think that their loved one who passed away's will is valid or is being distributed the right way. Those are the kind of issues that we deal with in the Court of Common Pleas every single day. And it's important that we choose the right people for those jobs.
Absolutely. It's very important that we choose the right people for the day. Thank you again for coming on to the show. We really appreciate it. Hope you become a friend of the show, and let's see you after the election.
Thanks.
We'll see who's going to win. We're not biased here, so please, we're not telling you to vote for one or other, because we have all of you guys come on our show.
Right.
So we're not telling the people to pick one or choose the other. Just remember that elections come with consequences. I'm going to say, as my friend always says, she's not here. She says, you have to be yourself because everyone else is taken.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of cool to see that you can be yourself. For me,
Thanks.
I say peace. We're out. Terry, we're out. Peace.